All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to become detectives. Because deep inside the Talmud, there's this incredible intellectual mystery just waiting to be solved. And look, this isn't about faith or religion. This is a story about pure, cold logic. It's got a flawed clue, some dead ends, and a conclusion that is, well, it's pretty shocking. And it might just change how you think about solving problems, period. So here's how we're going to crack this case. First up, we'll look at this really elegant rule that seems to tie everything together. Then, we hit our first snag, the lost animal problem. After that, we'll chase down a few theories, see where they lead, and that's when we get to the big twist, the rule that wasn't. And finally, we'll figure out what the real lesson was all along. Ready? Let's go.
Okay, let's set the scene. Our mystery kicks off with a scholar who comes up with this just beautiful, simple principle, a way to link two very different kinds of ancient sacrifices. It's a perfect theory. Or so it seems.
So let's meet our key players. First, you've got the sin offering, or chatat. This is mandatory. You mess up unintentionally, you bring this to atone. On the other side, you have the thanks offering, or todah. This one's totally voluntary. It's for expressing gratitude. And it has this really specific requirement, special loaves of bread. At first glance, these two things seem totally unrelated, right?
Well, an ancient sage named Shmuel comes along and proposes this, well, it's like a theory of everything for these two offerings. It's beautiful in its symmetry. He says, look, it's simple. If a situation calls for the sin offering to be left to die, then the thanks offering in that same situation, it does not need the loaves. But if the sin offering gets sent out to graze, then the thanks offering does need its loaves. See? It's clean, it's elegant, it feels like it explains everything. Maybe a little too perfect.
And you know, just like in any good mystery, there's always that one piece of evidence, that one thing that just doesn't fit, and it threatens to bring the whole beautiful theory crashing down. For us, that's the lost animal problem. To really get this, just picture it. You designate an animal for an offering, but then it wanders off. It's lost. So you do the responsible thing, you set aside a new one. And of course, right at that moment, the first one shows back up. So now you've got two animals for just one offering. What on earth do you do? Okay, so here's where it gets messy. In this lost and found scenario, the law is clear. The extra thanks offering does require its loaves. Now, one group of rabbis says the extra sin offering is sent to graze, and that lines up perfectly with part 2 of Shmuel's rule. But there's another major opinion from Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. He says the extra sin offering is left to die, and that just completely shatters the first part of Shmuel's rule. We have a major contradiction. All right, this is where the real detective work kicks in. If Shmuel's rule is going to hold up, we've got to make the evidence fit somehow. So the investigation begins. We start chasing down theories. Okay, first lead. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Shmuel agrees with Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. In the lost animal case, the sin offering is left to die. Now, this seems to blow up part 1 of his rule, but, the Talmudic sages really explore this. They try to see if there's any way to make it work. But here's the thing. When you solve one problem, another one pops up. If the most common scenario for an extra sin offering means it's left to die, where do we ever find a case where it's sent to graze? I mean, did Shmuel just make up a whole part of a rule that's basically useless? It doesn't make sense.
But the sages are clever. They find a potential out in a totally different scenario. What if, from the get-go, you set aside two animals? One is the offering, and the other is a backup, a guarantee, just in case. In that situation, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi agrees the extra animal is sent to graze. It looks like we've saved the rule.
But then, the other shoe drops. The final piece of evidence comes in, and the whole theory just collapses. Because in that exact guarantee case, the extra thanks offering does not require loaves, which flatly contradicts the second half of Shmuel's rule, the part that says grazing equals loaves. So theory number 1, it's a bust, a dead end.
Okay, back to the drawing board. Maybe we're looking at the wrong guy. What if Shmuel agrees with a different authority, Rabbi Shimon? Now, Rabbi Shimon is much stricter. He says in both the lost animal case and the guarantee case, that extra sin offering, it's left to die, period.
And this theory hits a brick wall even faster. I mean, if Shmuel follows Rabbi Shimon, there are literally 0 situations where a sin offering gets sent to graze. That would mean Shmuel invented half a rule that has absolutely no application in the real world. It's just not logical. So that's another dead end. So what do we have? Two dead ends. The elegant rule is in pieces. All our leads have gone cold. And when that happens in an investigation, there's only one thing left to do. You have to start questioning your basic assumptions. And that brings us to the climax of our story, the rule that wasn't. After all this, after all the intellectual gymnastics trying to make these theories work, the Talmud just lays it out. This shocking conclusion. And the thing is, the entire investigation was flawed right from the beginning. It turns out we weren't failing to solve the puzzle. We were given a faulty clue. And here it is, the big twist. Shmuel, he never said the second part of that rule at all. That whole piece about the animal being sent to graze, the very thing that caused all our headaches and contradictions, it was never there. It was basically an assumption that got tacked on later by other scholars. So this is what he actually said. It's direct, it's simple, it has only one part. In any situation in which a sin offering is left to die, if that same situation happens with a thanks offering, it does not require loaves. That's it. That's the whole thing. No grazing, no contradictions, no puzzle. The whole mystery just vanishes. But, okay, that just opens up a whole new can of worms, doesn't it? If the rule is that simple, why even say it? What was the point? And that brings us to the final and honestly the most important part of our whole investigation, the real lesson. To figure out Shmuel's real motive, we have to introduce the true villain of our story, if you can call him that. It's another famous scholar, Rabbi Yohanan, and his very different legal principle. He argued that you can get atonement from the enhancements of sacred property, like the profits or even the offspring of a consecrated animal. And this slide, this reframes absolutely everything. See, Rabbi Yochanan thought that the baby of a thanks offering animal could be sacrificed and would require loaves. But think about it. What happens to the baby of a sin offering? Well, it's left to die. So, if you apply Shmuel's actual, simple, one-part rule, if the sin offering's offspring dies, then the thanks offering's offspring must not require loaves. And there it is, the motive. Shmuel's statement was never meant to be this grand unifying theory about offerings at all. It was a surgical strike, a razor-sharp, targeted argument designed for one single purpose: to subtly but powerfully tear down Rabbi Yochanan's position on a completely different topic. The whole mystery we were trying to solve, it was a proxy war for an entirely different debate. Which really leaves us with one last question to chew on. This whole ancient detective story, it's not just about sacrifices and forgotten rules. It's about how we solve problems. And it forces us to ask ourselves, how many times in our own lives are we struggling to find the right answer, when the real breakthrough, the real solution, comes from realizing we've been asking the completely wrong question from the very beginning?